Hey everyone, welcome back. Yang and Zhao today here with Ty, the comic guy.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And we continue the week of too many streams. So, Ty, you're here. You've launched your first campaign, which is already successful. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a long time coming, so I'm very happy I got the response I did out of the gate, and I feel
And
very lucky.
how long were you working on this idea before you decided to launch?
I've been working on this book specifically for 2 years, and it started out as a much smaller thing before that, like a little 8 pager that just kept expanding and gnawing at my brain until I went, okay, I give in. This book needs to come out, and I'm so happy I gave in because I've had such fun working on it. But
Awesome.
I do everything on it except the editing.
Mhm.
So it took forever because I was doing the pencils, the inks, the colors, the lettering. So also a learning process because, like you said, it's my first campaign. So it's been with me for a while.
Hmm. That's interesting that you said you weren't doing the editing. What made you decide to get an editor?
There were two main reasons I thought I should get an editor. One is I came to comics later in life, so I
Hmm.
did not have that growing up with them experience.
Oh, interesting.
Um, when I found them, I just really did fall in love with the medium. But my problem was I had like the opposite of most people's introduction to comics. I did get the comic at a 7-Eleven with the spinner rack and all that good stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I was too young to understand that a cover art was different than the interior art. So
Oh.
I loved the cover art. It might have been a Jim Lee. I'm not positive, but it was a Batman, and it was after the Tim Burton movie came out.
Oh, wow.
And I loved the Tim Burton movie, so I got this comic just solely based on the cover. And then I opened it up, and the art inside was so much different that
Hmm.
as an 8 year old, I felt ripped off. If that makes any sense, like, but
I feel that way now.
so that kind of kept me away from comics for a while. And then later, when I was trying to write some novels and stuff, I realized I was doing all this drawing for the novels and
Hmm.
went, wait a minute, there is a perfect genre where I could be writing and drawing. It's called a comic book. So the reason I
Oh.
went with an editor is because the writing style is so different, and not having that experience, I knew that I could be missing out on certain aspects of it. And then the other thing was I am very long winded, which does not work unless you're Chris Claremont. So
Yes.
it was half my page is filled up with bubbles. I should probably get somebody to help. And I did find an editor, and she was great. And she was also very good at, you can do better at this, redraw this panel, which I think as an
Oh.
artist I also needed to hear, because sometimes when it's your work, you don't pick up on certain mistakes. I mean,
Hmm.
you can hyper focus sometimes, but other times it's, oh yeah, that head is way too big for that body. Okay. And
Hmm.
also with the long winded, she also pointed out, like, you have a subplot here you don't need. Take this all out. Take it all out. Do it in another book if you want to do it. But this is already 72 pages. You don't need it to be 150 pages.
Yeah, it's very impressive that you realize that coming into it, because that's one of the problems that I see, especially from people who came in from more of like a novel writing perspective. It's that comics are really a visual medium, and even though, of course, the writing and dialogue are important, you have to play towards the visuals first, or it doesn't work.
Yes,
And I find
I agree completely.
Yeah, and I find that with especially people who are doing their first books, like, money is always an issue. So they're like, well, I can cut out the editor. I can cut out, this and that, but it's always like the editor. So they're like, I know what I want to do. I get spell check.
Yeah, I since I am doing everything in my free time, that definitely helps with the cost aspect of it. So it for me, the editor was the most important one. But honestly, the first feedback I got on the book was a little bit more what you're talking about, and I kind of love it was my first feedback because
Mm-hmm.
it's everything's uphill from here. The person was not mean, but their
Mm-hmm.
response was basically, "Your writing's okay. Everything else you should really hire people for, and you might
Mm.
want to get an editor on top of that." So it's okay. So you're saying all the art sucks, and I need to get an editor. Okay, thanks. That's helpful. But I went straight to the editor aspect of that, and I think that response really helped because it was only the first 8 to 12 pages that I showed this person.
Mm-hmm.
So once I had that under the belt and I started talking to the editor, it made the whole process flow so much better. So to me, the editor is like the invaluable expense to put on it.
Yeah, I think so too, because if you invest a lot of time and money into, if you're doing it yourself or you're not just producing those pages and the story doesn't work, that's either means you're going to have a low quality project um, or you're going to have to pay a lot of money to fix it later. So definitely the editor's the thing that's worth it the most, I think.
I agree. Uh, and also investing in an iPad and Procreate, that
No.
I felt really helped because there's a difference in things you can do. I all the coloring was mostly done in Photoshop, and then
Hmm.
everything was hand drawn and inked. So certain things where it was you need to redo this panel just became so much easier in Procreate rather than having to redraw the whole page.
Yeah, yeah.
So definitely saved me in the long run too.
Hmm. So let's take a look. The Undying Chronicle, Eyes of Purple and Red.
Red and purple, but close.
Red and purple. Sorry.
It's all good,
Ah,
man. I
damn
was watching
dyslexia.
Star Trek too much and started doing red and gold just because of the uniform colors, and it's easy to mess it up.
So tell us a little bit about the story.
The story is about a village where a bank of fog comes in ominously, and in the fog there's a giant creature. And the giant creature starts grabbing up several of the local boys and drags them off into the woods. And the parents are torn and they have no idea what they can do, and enter a roaming samurai called the Undying. The
Mhm.
Undying is an immortal being, and I do have a page lower we can get to show kind of how this works. But um, he isn't immortal in the way of a vampire or that sort of thing. It's he comes back to life after he dies, but in reverse. So he goes through everything that killed him, but backwards. So if his skull crushes, he feels it uncrushing when he comes back to life.
Oh, okay.
So it's almost like a double painful thing. He
Hmm.
will get to that point where he thinks, "Oh, I'm dead. I'm not going to have to worry about this horrible pain," and then he's coming back. So the Undying goes after the monster to try to rescue the children, and there's some backup lore that goes into a little bit of spoilers, but it's not just a standard knight storming the castle to rescue the princess from the dragon. I've got some lore built in about who the Undying is, and one of these children becomes very, very important.
Oh, interesting.
And he's been hunting these creatures for a very long time, and he is doing so because he feels responsible for unleashing them on the world. So to him,
Hmm.
every person that's hurt as a result of these folklore creatures that come from the darkness is his fault. So that's his quest for as long as he's around, is to try to save as many people as he can from them.
So he's kind of obsessed with finding the monsters.
Correct.
Ah, interesting. And does his immortal status have something to do with these monsters as well, or is he like born immortal, child of a god type of thing, or?
That's not really touched on in this book, other than the basic concept of it. I do have a prequel that will explain how he and the monsters are linked. He was not born immortal. The thing that turns him immortal is the same thing that opened portals to other worlds where these monsters came from.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So that's touched on a little bit, but I don't go into a lot of detail just because I want to have the prequel aspect of it, where it's still I want to know more. So you might want to check out the prequel. And once again, to make sure it's not 150 pages for the first time out.
Yeah, that makes sure. But it does seem like it's a fairly good size for a book. It's 72 pages.
Correct. It's a full color. There's an interior, two interior covers that's just like the acknowledgments and
Hmm.
the credits. And there's also a back cover, which is the poster that's right at the bottom of the screen there. That's also the
Hmm.
back cover.
Oh, cool.
So it was
Uh,
fairly ambitious, and probably why it took me 2 years.
yeah, it is pretty ambitious for a first project. Um, so was it hard to like cut it down to that 72, or once you cut it down, was it tough to go back up?
If I did not do the editor, it would have been much harder to cut it down to the 72 pages. She was very good at helping point out. There was a couple times where she's like, "This whole page can go. Like, you're not progressing the story with this page. You're just doing filler. It becomes boring." So that's why I was saying the editor is so invaluable in my
Hmm.
experience, because I liked the page. Obviously, that's why I made it. But as an editor, you also get your first reader, and you get the direct feedback before you get too far into it. So I think cutting down pages was not easy, but it was much easier having someone else explain why the page needed to be cut down.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it's
okay,
definitely a lot easier to, make those cuts and make those edits once somebody explains to you, like, this is why this doesn't work.
exactly. And I think I probably it would have been 80 pages without the idea of putting the prequel in it that came later.
Hmm.
And that was another one where the other is like, no, we agreed on 72 pages. You're not throwing in a whole prequel into this.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
but at least that means I will have a shorter project for the next one. That one I think
Okay.
will only be 24 pages.
Oh, all right. And so you did all the artwork yourself. How long have you been drawing?
I've been like doodle drawing for my whole life. Um, I was able to go to college to get an art degree, and in that I was exposed to all sorts of other um, genres. Like I did glass blowing and metalsmithing,
Oh, cool.
and as strange as it sounds, I do think that those help with the drawing aspect, because you learn to not rush things, and you have to kind of go with the flow, because when you're working with stuff that's 2000 degrees, if you
Hmm.
rush things, you hurt yourself badly. so then
Definitely.
so then when you're, oh, I need to draw faster, it's so much easier to go, just think if this was in glass and you want to push it this far, you're not only going to get a sloppy product, but it's going to hurt. So I did those, and I also do a lot of acrylic painting, and
Ah,
and
yeah.
I actually have a focus on landscapes, so I have a lot of landscape stuff going on in the book too.
Okay. Yeah, I did notice you had, which I think is sold, but you one of your tiers was, I think, this painting.
Correct. I was so happy that sold like in the first 12 hours.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah,
I
it
had,
looks really neat.
thank you. That was something I had been working on of a series. I started liking the idea of getting the stretch canvases and painting the frame
Hmm.
on it because that way
Oh,
you know for sure the frame will match the painting, and it's also
that's
nice
true.
for anyone else if they want to buy it and not have to get another $35 for a frame. So it definitely was rolling around in my head, this painting in this series, when I was working on the book. So I thought, yeah, might as well throw this on, see if anyone's interested. And I was just blown away that someone got it that quickly.
Um, and so this takes place in Japan. Have you been to Japan? Like, always been interested in Japan, or how did you come up on this setting for
Uh, there's a couple different things with that. One of the main ones is I had a friend in college who ended up moving to Japan,
it? Hmm.
doing teaching English.
Oh.
And while she was immersed in the culture and telling me about it, I just started getting more and more interested in it. The pictures she sent me, because she lives in a more rural area, it's just beautiful and stunning. And as an artist, I think that's something that we tend to be gravitated towards, is the things that are out there that are beautiful, that you really like, and then you start diving into it. And then secondly, in that college thing, I had the chance to go to a museum in New York, the Metropolitan Museum, and they had an arms and armor section. That's why I was there, and I was interested in European stuff at the time, but they had a whole section on samurai armor. And
Hmm.
once I saw that stuff in person and the intricate detail and the stylization, that that also stuck in my head on, this is something that's super awesome. I want to incorporate it into my art. So it was kind of a combination of the two, of having the friend who's immersed in the culture giving me like a firsthand account, and seeing these beautiful, awesome things that triggered as an artist this desire to want to do it. And with the samurai story, I think there might also be a bit of a. My dad was super into westerns, and
Ah.
those spaghetti westerns are really directly taking from 30s samurai movies.
Hmm.
So I think that all of that started culminating into this project. So I have not been able to get over to Japan yet. I do have a invitation if I ever want to, but she just had her second kid, so
Oh,
wouldn't be the best time to do it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if they ever reopened up after COVID either, because I know for a long time they were just pretty much locked down to foreigners.
I think that they're still predominantly locked down, but there are a few exceptions, but I probably don't count for those exceptions.
Well, eventually, eventually.
Yeah, she had a couple friends that also moved out there, and they
Hmm.
had to move back here during the whole COVID thing, because
Oh,
it
wow.
it was a weird passport visa situation. So I'm not sure on all their regulations, but they were definitely really strict on foreigners in the country.
Yeah, Japan has always been like that.
That's true, until we came in and went, no, you're going to trade with us in the 1800s.
Um, all right. And so you said it took you 2 years. Was it the the writing that took the majority of that time, or the artwork, or?
It's a combination, because I work in a very strange manner. I kind of work, what's the phrase, the Marvel way, which
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
which doesn't work when you're doing both of the things.
Yes.
So I had a general outline that I did first, and that didn't take too long. Um, well, once I sat down and did it, like I said, I had done the little 8-pager, and as I was trying to do some other projects, it kept coming back. So by the time I went, no, I have to do this whole book, I had basically the whole outline in my head of what I wanted to do. The problem is that once I started doing the thumbnails and going into the pencils, it would be like, okay, well, I have this outlined as a page. It needs to be 2 pages because, like I said, it'll just be filled with text bubbles and you couldn't see any of the art. So it was the combo of those two things that made it longer. Um, and then definitely once I had most of the pages done and I reached out to the editor
Hmm.
and she was pointing out the some of the dialogue stuff, that became a little bit more challenging, um, to cut down on what I want to say because I've kissed the Blarney Stone and it shows up in my writing.
um, so, out of curiosity, have you previously written novels, or that was just sort of the way you started off, and then you just sort of came over into comics?
I've attempted novels is probably the best way of putting it.
Okay.
I've never finished one, and part of the problem on that is I have a learning disability that's kind of like dyslexia, but
Hmm.
instead of just moving letters around, I'll flip or mirror them. The best example I
Oh,
can
okay.
give is P, D, B, and Q, lowercase.
Hmm.
I will sometimes use interchangeably. So if I want to
Yes.
write bad, I write dad or quad or something like that. So my brain's going faster than I can type. So I get to the point where okay, I'm 4 chapters ahead of myself in the writing. Like I know 4 chapters and it's taking me forever to actually put it down on the screen and then even longer to go back over and make sure I didn't do those mistakes.
Hmm.
So unfortunately it gets to the point where you become a little bit bored because you're I know where all of this is going and I just can't get it out quick enough. So I've had, I'd say, 5 different attempts at novels over the years that range from anywhere between 3 chapters to 15 chapters.
Hmm.
They're almost exclusively fantasy, so that also, I was trying to be Tolkien, which does not help when you're a slow writer.
Well, I mean, he was kind of a slow writer. Took him what, like 40 years to get some of that stuff published?
Well, to get it published, I don't know how long it took him to write it, but that's a good point too.
So you like the fantasy? Is that sort of what brought you into this, or is this a like the? I mean, it's close to fantasy, but like kind of like monster, a little bit of horror elements. Is this like a departure from the stuff you were writing before, or is this more like the culmination of where you're like, okay, I got it now?
I'd say it's probably the culmination because one of the novels I wanted to write when I was still doing the transition between writing and comic books really was more of a comic book than a novel. And
Hmm.
I had this whole idea of it's almost like the cliche anime, ancient evil wakes up, group of people have to come together to stop the evil. And I think that was the first sparks of this character. Uh, and then I started doing the comic stuff, and that's why it was one of my first little 8-page trying to get into the genre. So I think I like it because I do have a love of history and I do like the fantasy. So I think, like you said, it's the culmination of those two coming together.
Hmm. And since you said you've kissed the Blarney Stone, have you ever thought about like sort of mashing up other genres in the future, like let's say a little Lovecraft or like a film noir, something that is a little bit more verbose?
Uh, I did have an idea that was more of a not necessarily I want to do it as a project, but an exercise in the writing and art aspect
Hmm.
of doing how do I want to put it? It was going to be a Jekyll and Hyde sort of a thing that he was actually going to be a character in it, and
Oh,
he was
cool.
giving his potion to Jack the Ripper, and that's why Jack the Ripper was doing his murderous stuff. And then I was throwing in a bit of oh, I can't remember his name. Mike Mignola. I can never pronounce that right.
Yep.
Kind of like he has with the Hellboy series, where you've got that organization that tries to stop the people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was definitely trying to mash up much more of a noir style. I was looking at a lot of Frank Miller, like Sin City stuff at that time too. So I was trying to do lots of really deep shadows, highlights, um, and as little color as possible.
Nice.
So I do have a few other things I want to try, but this guy just will not leave me alone. So
So now that you've got this out, you've got it funded, like what would you say your big uptakes, the big learning experiences have been from this first campaign?
definitely have to have a tighter outline before I start the drawings is, I'd say, the biggest one for me as a creator
Mm-hmm.
and as a promoter. You know, when you consider it's kind of doing a small business when you're doing your campaign stuff, I really was not thinking about stuff like what we're doing right now before I put it out there. I did not do as much networking as I wanted to. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just so fortunate that you said you would have me on the
No,
show.
well, of
I've
course, man.
also had great luck with Ginge and Pedro. They've had me on a couple times.
Oh, nice.
So that I definitely want to focus more on the marketing before I do the next one as far as the
Mm-hmm.
campaign goes. And I want to make sure that I have as nice, tight, concise story as I can for the prequel. So working more on the outline, which is hard for me because I do tend to do the drawing stuff way earlier. In fact, I can do this real quick if I can do a screen share, if that's all right.
Oh, yeah, of course. Let's see this.
So, though I
There
need
we
to
go.
have an outline, I already have a page for it.
Oh, nice.
And I think that goes to that writing thing I was talking about, where
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's easier for me to do the image on the page and see where it goes than try to do the outline. So I need to focus definitely on doing better on the thumbnails and the outlines before spending all the time doing the drawings. But this one I figured was cool enough that I'll find a place to put it in.
Yeah, this is very cool. I really like the black and white.
Thank you.
Great values.
I have done a little coloring on the other one, on this page, I should say, and I can't decide if the next one should be black and white or not. It would be a little bit faster, but I think that there's also a cooler aspect of it having it be a prequel of doing some of the black and white, almost like, you know, when you watch a film or a movie and they do a
Yeah.
sepia for a flashback.
Huh. Yeah, that's an interesting. That's a good question. Yeah, I could see that like a sepia or like a half tone or something to make it look old timey. That would definitely work.
Yes, I just need to make sure if I have flashbacks within it that I I match that correctly.
Yeah.
So otherwise it would be confusing.
And so you mentioned that Jim Lee at 8 years old was your first comic experience that didn't go well. So when you got back into it, who did you start reading?
Well, I want to make sure I clarify. I'm not positive it was Jim Lee, but it was early '90s Batman, so I think it was Jim Lee.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think he was at.
Did he already go to Image at that point?
I think he was Image because he went from doing X-Men for Marvel right to Image. I don't remember when he went over to DC, but it was a few years. I think it was more like mid to late 90s.
I could be wrong. Like I said, I was 8. The image in my head definitely would fit Jim Lee's style, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was Jim Lee, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then when I came back, I started with the big two, And the first run I started collecting was Damnation by Donny Cates. And I know
Oh.
he's not I know he's one of those figures that some people really like and some people don't.
Hmm.
Uh, I I personally really enjoyed the idea of that run, which was basically Las Vegas was taken over by Mephisto. So that just as a premise, I thought was very cool. And then in the first issue, it's like 4 years old. So spoilers, but it's 4 years old. So um, the Avengers come to try to stop him, and they're immediately taken over, and they fail. So it then became much more the mystic people, like Blade was in
Hmm.
it. I want to say Iron Fist, Scarlet Spider. Uh, I think Doctor Strange was in it, but I can't remember if he was one of the Avengers that got taken over or if he was the leader. And it almost became like a horror meets Ocean's 11 meets the Marvel universe,
Oh, that's
where
cool.
where oh, and Ghost Rider was in it too. I Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. So there was a core set, and then there was the side ones, which does annoy me with the mainstream event things, where you're like, can I just have one book and not have to buy 5 different titles? But I did really like that, and then I started doing his run on Venom with Ryan Stegman as the artist. I
Hmm.
I really like those. And as for DC, I tried several of the. I think it was called the New Heroes. Silencer and Brimstone were the two I really got into. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Sorry, dry throat.
No problem.
Uh, and Brimstone was kind of in the same vein as Ghost Rider, and I did like that demon from hell trying to do good sort of aspect. And Silencer was also a really cool character. She was part of a group called Leviathan, and it was like an action version of an old mafia story where I try to get out, but they keep pulling me back in. So that's where I started with those. Um, I did get some image stuff, and then I started finding more indie things as I was looking at stuff on YouTube.
Hmm.
Most recently, I got Magna from John from
Oh,
Beyond
nice.
and Fiendish from Renee Draws.
Yeah.
I've really
Uh,
enjoyed both of those, but my problem is that I was getting piles of books that I was not going through.
oh,
I just did not have the time. You get to a certain point where I can either make comics or I can read comics. I can't do both at the same time.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I've been pretty selective on what books I do get now. So I haven't been getting as much lately as I wanted to. And I'm also trying to keep to shorter, like my length,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit more and shorter, because I tried doing the Watchmen, which is great, but that thing is a freaking textbook.
Yeah.
I also had Planet Hulk there too, and
Oh, nice.
I really like the art on that one and the story. But once again, that thing is, you could do some damage if you drop that on somebody.
Yeah, I think I mean I like buying indie books. You can definitely get yourself in a little bit too deep after a while, but you shouldn't feel bad if you're not reading them at least right away, because I mean, as a creator, you do need to see what the competition's doing and to figure out, like what kind of paper do I need, what length is doing well, that kind of thing.
That is definitely true. I realized after I did this that the length of my book is not normal. The more I was networking, the more I saw that I shouldn't say not normal, not as done as often. I saw so many
Hmm.
more volume one of this, and it's floppy to double size,
Yeah.
which is why I wanted to keep the prequel a little bit smaller. Plus, I can keep the cost down for the consumer that way too.
Hmm.
because it's going to be much cheaper printing 24 pages than 72.
Oh, for sure.
And I've
I
also
think.
been more cognizant of perks, which I know you talked about yesterday a bit on the show. So
Ah.
I've got to try to figure out that line that you guys were talking about yesterday of, do you have too many perks and it makes the campaign kind of confusing to navigate, or
Mhm.
do you not have enough? I've actually had a couple of my backers say, I wish you had a few extra perks because I would have liked to get like a commission or an original page or stuff like that. So,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I personally do not like most of the perks. When I buy a book, I want the book. Like that's my primary thing. But I know I'm kind of an outlier in that because there are tons of people who love all the perks. They love getting, trading cards are big. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff. I've seen some cool campaigns where, people will buy themselves into the book basically. Like you back at a certain amount and then they're a character in the book,
oh, I've
or in the
seen that.
background or something like that.
Yeah, like it's a crowd shot, and if you're at certain level, then you're one of the people in the
Hmm.
crowd. That is definitely an interesting concept. I don't know that that would be something I'm at a level to do yet. Where I do think my drawings are cool. They're stylized to an extent. I feel like I'm not good at portraits, so I feel like that would
Uh,
not be nice for the people that pay the extra money. Be like, That's supposed to be me," you know. Like if you've ever gone to a beach or something where they've got the
mhm.
caricature person and they're really bad, I don't want to do that to somebody.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's a lot of interesting things. I do find that people, one thing people throughout a lot of different campaigns have liked is something that's more expensive, because maybe they like you and they want to give you more money, but like they don't want to just donate, So if you have, I don't know, some other expensive item. Sometimes it's a T-shirt, or I think the original art. I think that's pretty good. Like, definitely you see that one, your painting, that sold, and let me see. Yeah, it was down at $100. So if you had like a few more things like that, I can definitely see, you know, people
That
backing that, and then it, juices up that number at the end.
that is my plan for the next campaign. Um, like I said, since this is my first one, I wasn't too sure how it was going to be
Sure.
received. But I do have some. I would, I guess, I would call them wood blocks. I don't know if you go to art
Oh.
stores very often, but they've
Hmm.
got those little blocks of wood for like $1.
Sure.
I would get those, sand the edges, and then I have wood burning tools.
Hmm.
So I would draw into those and then paint on top of them. And I do have several, like the painting in this campaign with the castle and the cherry blossom. So that's one of the things I'm probably going to put into the next campaign. I just need to figure out the shipping, because that was something else I was worried about, is the shipping cost. I mean, it's much easier just to send a Gemini mailer. With
Hmm.
the painting, I can do the Gemini in the same box as the painting. I didn't want to do that thing like Amazon does, where you get like the book and the one little thing, and the box is huge.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
definitely thinking of doing more of the paintings and the wood block things for the next one. I'm a little hesitant on the original art, just because I know people want to frame it and put it on their wall, and
Hmm.
I don't use Bristol board. I
Oh.
I found that when I do the bigger stuff, I put in so much detail that would never show up on the page. Like when I tried to do some of that stuff, plus my scanner doesn't do the full Bristol board paper.
Hmm.
So I work on this drawing paper that's, let me grab it really quick. What size is this? It's 9 by 6 inches, and
Oh, okay.
it's spiraled on the side, and I go right up to the spirals when I draw. So the only reason I don't know about doing the original art is I feel like that would be hard for somebody to frame.
That's true, but I don't know. I think people always like original art,
Yeah,
whatever size it would be.
Ginge is going to be my experiment. I think you've talked to him on Ryan's late night inks before.
Yeah, yeah.
He has helped me so much, and he said he really wanted one. So I showed him some of the ones that are on the campaign, the original drawings,
Hmm.
and asked him, would you be interested in this? And he's like, hell yeah. So he'll let me know how big of a problem it is to get it framed and matted and all that stuff. And he'll be a good test case subject, so to speak.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I think the wood burning stuff would work well too. I know Rini from Fiendish. She also had a wood burning thing early on in her campaign for Fiendish, and that sold out pretty quick.
I remembered that, and I actually talked to my editor about that at one point because I'm
Hmm.
like, I feel like even though I made these before I saw Fiendish, that I'm ripping her off. And once again, value of an editor telling me how stupid that was to think.
I mean, I think it's pretty cool. Plus, there's a lot of traditional Japanese woodblock printing. So if it's kind of in that style, it really makes it very appropriate for your project and something that people who are into or somewhat of like Japanophiles or they like that, like you were talking about the old samurai movies and stuff. It seems like that would be right up their alley.
Yes, I'm very much regretting that I didn't put it on this campaign.
Well, that's all right. I mean, it's a first campaign, man. You can't put everything in there.
True. And there's really no crystal ball on your first one of, you get some friends and family, but people outside of that sphere, you have no idea what they're going to like and what they're not going to like.
That's true. That's true.
So I'm definitely taking this as a learning experience because I have
Um,
several other stories I want to do with this guy, so it
oh, interesting.
shouldn't be the end of the campaigns.
So then, out of curiosity, when you're writing stories like this, do you see it more in sort of like first act, second act, third act, or like beginning, middle, end to his career? Or do you see it more like you would see in the big two where they're very open ended, or like Norse mythology where it just keeps going on and on?
Um, I definitely wanted this to be a self-contained story that was open to other things, but you did not necessarily have to get something else.
Okay.
Like I said, with the idea of the prequel, I do have enough in the story that you can fill in the dots as a reader. I think if
Hmm.
it might not be exactly what I have in my head, but you'd still have a satisfied in your own head as a reader if I don't do anything else. And I also wanted it to have a conclusion that was not directly setting up a sequel. It can set up a
Ah, okay.
sequel, and I have an idea for a sequel, but I figured if you're going to be spending the money on 72 pages of a graphic novel, you would want the whole story. You don't want, oh, now I have to wait for him to produce another one, and how long is that going
Yes.
to take? And
Yeah, that is kind of one of my problems with a lot of comics, especially. I don't know. I don't know if I would even say new creators, but looking in the indie world, like a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm 72 pages in and I haven't even gotten to the inciting incident. I just have some background on the character. So it's definitely nice to see a complete self-contained story. Like if I like it, I'm going to want to read something more, but I need to have that satisfying feeling. If otherwise, it's like kind of like when you're just snacking a lot instead of eating like a full meal,
right,
and it's like, okay, well, I ate, but I don't feel really satisfied.
yeah, I'm
That's kind of
full
how
but
I
not
feel.
satisfied.
Yeah, that's how I feel with a lot of stories. It's like, okay, you got to get to the point. I'm cool if you got like a whole, 13 other issues planned out, but I need some resolution at the end of this one.
I agree, and I've seen that not just in comic books, but in so many movies and
Hmm.
TV shows and stuff lately too. And it gets so annoying, and not in a bad way. I mean, I do like the anticipation of, okay, where this going, but
Hmm.
half the time the show gets canceled, so you have no resolution.
Yeah. Oh man. Especially recently with stuff like on Disney and Netflix. Um, Well, it can go either way. Like a lot of times there'll be a season one, and season one will be pretty good, but you can definitely tell that they didn't really anticipate anything else would come of it. So it's like, oh, how do we shoehorn all this other stuff? Or it goes the other way where, like you were saying, nothing happens in season one and nothing happens in season two. And it's like this season is just a setup for next season.
Yeah, and I feel like Marvel movies have gotten there too in a lot of ways. Like,
They've been there for a while. I mean, Avengers 2 was not a very good movie.
no, no, it was not. I liked some of the elements in it, and
Yeah.
I will give them credit that some of the rights issues definitely handcuffed them,
Hmm.
especially with having to change Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver's whole backstory because they don't have mutants. And uh, but at the same time, then they were doing the Shield stuff with the Inhumans thing to try to get around it, and it's like I don't want to have to watch 5 seasons of Shield to know what's going on in this movie.
Yeah. Um, but I mean, for me, there are even more fundamental problems. Like Thor goes into a lightning bath and then he's like, oh, I got to go. And it's like a setup for
Oh,
Ragnarok.
true, true.
And, Hulk, there was kind of, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a resolution, but not that much. He's just kind of like
He's
floating
gone.
off into space. Forget that whole romance between Bruce Banner and Black Widow.
Yeah,
Never
that
come
one
up
was
again.
weird.
And
That one
and
was weird.
and the whole like Clint Barton thing with his family. Like in some ways, it was nice to see some of the Avengers who have a normal family life and how they'd be affected. But at the same time, it was like,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
it's already a 2.5 hour long movie. Do we really need this? I
Sure.
also was very dubious of, oh, I've been mind controlled by Loki in the last movie, so Scarlet Witch, your mind control doesn't work on me now
Yeah,
for
that
reasons.
it was just lazy. I mean, I liked the first one. Okay, I really liked Infinity War, and the last one. If you look at it very closely, it's not that great, but overall, it gives you a good feeling. It wraps up that story in a nice package, and you feel satisfied.
Exactly. But then you run into another problem too with return audiences.
Hmm.
This is obviously a macro versus crowdfunding stuff. Where once we hit Endgame, I was kind of done. Like I had been
Yes.
watching them for their whole run so far, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm not really into the Spider-Man movies. There's nothing wrong with them. I just wasn't into them for some reason. I still have to check out the newest one with bringing all the Spider-Men into it. Um,
It was nice. It was nice. I wouldn't say it was the deepest movie ever. And a lot, some people criticize it as like just a rehash of old stuff, which is totally true. But it was done like in a respectful way, something that you don't see very much from Hollywood anymore. It's
yes,
usually like, screw you, people who like the old stuff.
I've heard that. And then the other thing I was thinking, just not having seen it yet, but being a comic book sci-fi fan,
Hmm.
is I almost feel like since they're doing the multiverse thing now, that from what I've heard about the movie and the repetitive stuff, it
Hmm.
seems like a nice introduction to people that don't get how a multiverse works. Like you could
Yes.
argue that the repetitive nature is, well, of course it would be repeating because it's the same stuff in a different timeline. Uh, so I did like that, and same with the Flash TV show. I was into that one for a while, but then that started getting really repetitive too. And
Yeah.
their multiverse was handled, I think, well enough for people. But I'm also thinking that we're going to get to a point where it's just so freaking confusing with all that stuff. Like, there's going to be what now? 4 Batmans. You've got the Batman,
Hmm.
and Michael Keaton's coming back, and Ben Affleck's Batman is still around. I think it, it just gets to a point where
Yeah.
I think I've even heard rumors that there's going to be another Batman in the sequel to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know because all I've seen for sure is it's Folie à Deux is the title of it, which to me, knowing that term from watching criminal lawyer stuff like
Hmm.
NCIS and all that, I understand that it's when two people's delusions feed into each other. So to me, that would say Harley Quinn, but I've heard
Yeah.
other people argue that no, it's the uh, kind of like a rehash, unfortunately, of the original um, Burton Batman movie. Of yeah, I might have
Oh.
created you, Joker, but you created me when and so they're both. I don't know. It getting to a point is very confusing. So I basically don't
Yeah.
watch them unless it's on streaming. That way, I don't feel like I've wasted my time and money.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's. I don't know. There's something just so wrong with it. And you're seeing a similar problem. Well, part of the problem for me with all this multiverse stuff is it gives them an out, too much of an out. Like nothing has any weight because if somebody dies, like, oh, we just found another one from another multiverse, or oh, we'll just
Exactly.
switch over to this other timeline. I mean, with movies, unlike books, you're always going to have to sort of reboot and switch over because actors will get too old. They'll age out of the role. There's always you could have like an Ezra Miller situation where they just sort of go nuts, and
Oh,
you can't have them in movies.
and I had stopped watching the Flash TV show by this point, but I've seen the clip where Ezra Miller shows up in that TV show as the Flash, and I was like,
Oh,
the amount of people that were mad that you didn't just cast that guy because he's a very good Flash and Barry Allen. And then it almost feels like a middle finger to me of like, oh no, we could have had him. Here's clear proof since Ezra Miller's in his universe now that we could have had that dude. I just that just left a bad taste in my mouth for some reason.
yeah. Same with they were working on a big screen version of Constantine. And there was that show on NBC a few years ago, which was actually getting really good when it got canceled. And everybody loved, I can't remember the actor's name who played him. I know he showed up in either Flash or one of those CW shows a couple of times. But, they were saying, like, oh, well, we're going to recast him for the big screen. Like, why? When everybody loves
Yeah.
him, why would you recast?
And probably not a popular opinion, but I actually did like Keanu Reeves as Constantine in that early aught
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job. I thought he did a good job. I thought that the tone of the show in the movie made it very different. So I didn't necessarily have a problem with the two different people.
Yeah,
But I would be happy with Keanu Reeves coming back to play Constantine again.
especially now that he's had his own like renaissance since then, and Shia LaBeouf is dead in that movie, so we don't need to worry about bringing him back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it all works out.
Speaking of actors that go crazy,
There's just something, I don't know, something
but
too
before we
weird in this town.
leave,
Hmm.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure I did this before I forgot. I did actually pull up the wood blocks if you want to take a look at it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I didn't mean to cut you off there, but before we got
No,
too far
no.
away from that. So it's not just the Japanese ones, obviously, but just a
Mhm.
sample of the type of things.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So I was thinking of doing some of these on the next one, and these I don't know if my cursor's working on here.
Yeah, I see it.
That's actually like a paper mache, so it's textured.
Oh.
So I was thinking maybe doing something like this and then doing that texture for the tree bark.
Well, that'd be cool.
But well, definitely going to have to see what people think. And like you were asking about earlier, my next campaign, I am for sure going to be asking people more what they want before I launch the campaign.
Yeah, hey, there's nothing wrong with launching a first campaign that's a lot more streamlined and a bit simpler, easier. Just to like get your bearings, and then the next time, like, okay, now I know how this goes. Now I can add on to it, and I can tweak it so you get, people get the maximum value out of your campaign, and you can, of course, like we all got to earn money, right? So if you're making a campaign, of course you want to make some money on
Definitely, though, I will say that having worked on it for 2 years, the just getting it funded
it.
was my break even point for the printing costs and the editor and all that stuff.
Nice.
That was my main goal. Like it, I want people to be able to see the book so bad that that was my my undying wish, I guess. um, but yeah, next one definitely would like to be even bigger and better.
So is there any projects that are upcoming that you're really looking forward to?
From other creators or from me working.
Well, both. If you've got something else coming up.
Um, I have been in talks with someone to do the art for a anthology, and I
Oh.
don't know how much I am allowed to talk about it, but I am excited by
Ah.
the fact that they want me to do the art for something for their anthology.
Oh, very cool.
And I can say it's a horror themed anthology, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But I think it's not supposed to come out until 2023, so I don't have a super amount of details yet. Just like the basic premise. So I've been doing a lot of practicing around that, and so I'm really excited to be able to share that when I can. And as far as other creators, um, I'm really excited to get Hammerella by Ryan Wynn. Uh,
Yeah, me too.
and I think he's been so great at keeping us updated with it and showing us the images. And the more he's showing, the more I'm excited to see it. And I think he just said he found a printer, so definitely looking forward to that one. Um,
Yeah, I don't think he gave an ETA on when he can get in the printer schedule, but I do think he said he found one. So hopefully in the next couple of months.
that's what I'm hoping too. And I did also back King Cryptid from Peter Zametti. That seems like it would be right up my alley with the cryptid creatures hiding in the dark sort of thing. So I'm interested to see how that one goes. Um,
Yeah, that one looks like a lot of fun.
and oh, there was some other alternative stuff, but I'm spacing on the name right now. Uh, but in general, my biggest one is Hammerella. I've done some fan art for it already
Oh, cool.
that I was really happy with, and Ryan's helped me a lot too on being a better artist. Um, he's given me so many suggestions, like the trailer on my campaign page there. It wouldn't have happened without him, and it was such a simple fix that I didn't even consider. So I can't wait to see his work, and I'm assuming there's going to be another Gods and Gears pretty soon if he's wrapping up Hammerella. So I'm looking forward to that too.
I think so. I think he was showing some Dean Cott's art in there.
I definitely have seen some of it. I just don't know the ETA on that.
All right. And are you going to be making any more appearances anywhere, or how can people follow you?
Easiest way to follow me is on Twitter at Ranger Tyon, Tyion. You could also probably find me by just playing Ty the Comic Guy. That's the only social media I have. As far as shows, I've been talking to a couple other people. I don't have anything firm yet. I
Okay.
have a couple of. I'm going to start streaming in a couple weeks, so when I do, I'll hit you up.
Nice.
So I'm
Oh,
I'm very
definitely.
happy about that. And I'm also trying to find a stream I can do for the closeout of the campaign. I'm reaching out to a few people trying to figure out if I can do sort of a fun chat countdown, like it's midnight on New Year's Eve, sort of a thing.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds like fun. Um, all right. So, thank you everyone for coming. The week of too many streams continues on Friday, where Peter Samedi will be here at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Immediately after that, I will be appearing on the Dungeon Delvers channel to play Rex Dashington in Gamma World. And then next week on Monday at, I believe it's 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern, we'll have Tim Lim to talk about Soul Finder, Black Hops, and Common America crossover. Oh, and I also forgot, Nerds of the Roundtable will be Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. So thanks a lot for coming, Ty. The Undying Chronicles looks like a lot of fun. So anyone who is interested, check it out. There's a link. There should be a link in the description, or there will be momentarily.
Thanks for having me, and enjoy your week of too many streams, because that is definitely too many streams.
I agree. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thanks all.